All right, so this is the budget software webinar for revenue and cost specialists, also government software systems, and it's a basically software that we're in the late beta stages of, and still doing some initial programming, and as we get feedback from some initial clients, making changes and going forward with that. And so I'm going to go ahead and so you can see my desktop, and so you should be able to see the software here in a second. And so you guys are able to see the budget software on your screen?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, good. Okay, so we basically designed the budget software to be as easy for the departments to use as possible. That's always a challenge for finance departments, is to be able to identify, and to be able to create a budget document while getting all this information back from the departments. And so we want to try and make it as easy for the departments to use. So it's really geared on the toolbar here more towards the departments and the things that they'll be using once the budget process starts. But before that happens, there's all this information that needs to be set up by the finance department before you start the budget process. And so the first thing, of course, is when we go in and set up the software to begin with, there'll be the org structure definition, where we can define the org structure as to how each organization has it. So in this particular case, in this city, they have a very simple fund department. But this can be literally as many levels as an organization has, we define the characters. And so when they input it later, it's limited to what that org structure is, and people can't accidentally put in a incorrect structure. And it'll be the same thing with the account structure, where you can define it however many levels of account as you want. So you can put in sub-accounts as down to really however many levels that you want. And guys, just jump in here if you have any questions or want me to go back to anything.
Okay.
And so once you have that in, then it's a matter of putting in the organizational structure. And so we put in the org code list, and so it's just based on what we defined as the structure. It's a matter of inputting what that organizational structure is. And so in this case, just fund department. But if it's fund department division program, that's, again, however it was defined. And so it's just a matter of inputting that structure. And then the same thing on the account level. So it's a matter of entering all the different accounts, and you could set up subgroups however you'd like to be able to, all the various different salary and benefit accounts, in this case, all the different operations and maintenance. And you can define these groups however you want to define them. Then, of course, this is all good because this, in essence, is a personnel system. So this is going to be a lot of setup geared towards the personnel data that we're going to input later. So you identify your benefit components. And so you in other screens, you put in what are your different benefit groups, what are your different benefit components. In this case, we also have the workers' comp groups and such. And so you can go into each group and identify for, in this case, the general group, what's the unemployment, either dollar or percentage, what's the retiree health savings plan, dollar or percentage. And so you just go down the list and input what are the costs, either on a dollar or a percentage basis, for each of the various different benefit groups you set up. And the same thing with the workers' comp group. You can identify within each group which workers' comp groups fit within that group. So you may have within executive management, you may not want to have the workers' comp group be the manual workers' comp group be an option. And so you can go in here and define within this benefit group, it's only going to be these two workers' comp groups and not the other. So it makes it easier when you inputting positions later that you don't accidentally put assign a workers' comp group for something that's not even possible. And then the other screens have where we identify the bargaining unit definitions, the benefit component definitions, the workers' comp definitions, and then also the medical plan definitions. So you can put in as many different medical and dental plans as you have, and identify what is the annual cost for that. And importantly, identify where do the costs for this medical plan show up in the budget structure. So it identifies that health insurance costs show up in the health insurance account. And so you just define that so the system knows where to put these costs. And so then, of course, we want to identify what are all the various different position titles within the city. So it's just a matter of giving it a position code, the title, and then, of course, identifying which account that these costs show up in. So for full-time positions, it shows up in the permanent salaries, but you could have part-time positions that show up in temporary, or you see we have special salaries. And so, again, it's just identifying where the costs show up so the system knows which account to put these costs into. And then the position groups is more something towards fee studies. The additional pays is just identifying what are the various different additional pays that are available to employees. And so, again, it's just defining it and identifying which account those costs would show up into. All right, and then the salary chart is something that we actually create earlier, but you can go in and make changes to it if you would like. But it also allows you to back up here in the very beginning, create your salary chart. Wrong one. And so you can identify what is the first the first range number. It increments by so much. It ends with so much. The step starts with A, ends with F, or maybe it starts with 1 and ends with 6. So it allows you to define that and then step it up. Starts with whatever dollar amount, increase the range by whatever percent, increase the step by whatever percent, and so you can create the salary chart. One thing we don't have in here now, but is going to be coming, is different salary charts for different bargaining units, so that you may have one salary chart for general employees and another one for another bargaining unit. So it will allow you to have different salary charts for each bargaining unit. And then we get down to the employees. And so this will be all the various different employees and all the information about those employees. So name, it allows you to put in Social Security number, hire date, address, but not required. And then identifying what position this employee is based on the position list that we input earlier. It allows us to put in the salary either as a manual salary, where we can just click that box and allows us to put in an actual dollar amount, or it pulls off the salary chart. So in this case, it's the 31 range and the number 5 step for 12 months. But we can change it so that it's maybe they're at 6 months at this step and 6 months at another step. So you can define that. Same thing with the medical benefit. You would, from that list we looked at earlier, we can select which medical benefit they are subscribed to, and if they are multiple medical benefits through the course of the year, we can put that in there also. And then you identify what bargaining unit they belong to, what workers' comp group they belong to, any additional pays that they may have, and then over here identify what are the various different organizational units that it's budgeted in. So it allows us to go in, and if they belong to 2 different organizational units, put in, let's say, 0.5 here, and it shows up as you see bright red. So it's telling us that it's not fully allocated. And so we can select another organizational unit there. And so we can break that into as long a list as we want to. And so once we close all this, the system will then calculate what are the costs for the various different accounts, whether it be the salary account or the salary account in the human resources or the other unit, or add in the additional pays. And so it will do that for us automatically for each employee. And so it's just a matter of then going down the list and making sure that information is current and correct. And you could also look at it in more of an organizational structure, where you can see within City Clerk here are the positions that are allocated. You could look at that same employee detail information that we looked at also. Okay, so that gets us to our starting point. That gets us to where we're ready to start the budget process, and we can then go into our budget administration and start our budget process. And this whole system is really on a scenario-based system. So we want to create a base scenario that everything feeds off of. And so by clicking this button, it would then create that base scenario in the databases. It also allows us here to import the expenditure and revenue history for all the different organizational units. And so we would either do this through a SQL connection, a ODBC connection, or we can also do it through a Excel import. So whether the city's accounting package exports to Excel, we could then grab that information and import it into our history. So that you'll see where that becomes useful later on. And so we start the budget process and we create our base scenario. It's now that you could then turn it over to the departments. And we can go in our security and we'll have various different users that will have various different accesses that belong to various different groups. So you may have a police group that this will be the users within the police group, and we can break out that the police group is only able to use these organizational units. So they're only able to make changes to the organizational units within the police department, and so that they're not accidentally going in and making changes to the planning department. And so you can set up as many groups as you want. You could put whatever users you want in each group. You will, of course, have a finance group, which will have access to everything, but the various departmental user groups would only have access to what you allow them to have access to. In most cases, just their departmental information. And so now we get to the icons on the toolbar. And so these are the things that you use once you start the new budget process. And so oftentimes what would happen is that, let's say it's the police group and they want to come in and create their police scenario. So they want to go ahead and be able to make some changes and then come in here and create a new scenario from that base scenario and create a new one. And they just give it a name and maybe police 1. And so they could either copy the existing scenario as it is and just start making changes from there, or they can go in that, and this would probably be something more on the finance side, where finance might go in at the very beginning and say that, okay, all the general employees, we expect to have salary increases of X% per year, additional pay increases of X% per year. And you can put different percentages per each year for the various different bargaining units. You can do the same thing on the fringe benefits side, that for the various different groups, you can go in and identify this is how much we expect the various different groups to increase from year to year, the various different fringe benefit components, and do the same thing on the medical benefits. So it allows you to create these multi-year numbers for projections. And the same thing with the workers' comp numbers. And if there are individual expenditure accounts where you want to be able to go in, let's say registration, we don't want the departments to change registration. We just want to put in a 1% increase per year on registration numbers. So it allows you to go into individual accounts and put percentage of increases in instead of being numbers that you expect the department to put increases or changes on. And then importantly on the revenue side. Now the data that I have here doesn't have revenue count, so it's going to show up blank here, but there would be all the various different, sales tax and property tax and secured and unsecured. So it have your various different account list here, and it allows you to put in projections of what you think would be the increases from year to year on your various different revenue accounts, which of course will be very important. And so you again create these kind of scenarios, and as I mentioned, the scenarios are allows the departments to kind of play around with things. So maybe they have their base police scenario, but maybe they want to play around with, well, what happens if we add 2 more parking enforcement officers? What does that do for us? And so it allows them to put in play around with scenarios, and allows them to put in a +2 parking enforcement officer scenario, or what happens if we have 3 more officers but 1 less sergeant. And so it allows them to be able to, again, play around with different options for their budget. And so when you get down to the personnel changes, it's those same screens we saw before. And so it allows them to be able to make changes. Maybe they want to move the secretary from this division to another division. It allows them to insert vacant positions, whether it be a new proposed position or an existing position that they want to move from one place to another. So it allows them to kind of play around with those options there. And so, of course, the goal is that we start with the base with the employees, and what do they want to have going forward? What vacant positions do they want to propose? What movement of current employees do they want to move around? And so it allows them to then make those changes. Same type of thing on the expenditure accounts, and so you have all your various different expenditure accounts. You see the department listed up here, and so various different expenditure accounts. And so earlier when we talked about importing the history, and so now you can see where that comes in, where you can see the expenditure history for all the various different accounts. And so when the departments are looking at what do we want to do with this account or that account, they can see what they've done in the past, both on a budget basis, on an actual basis, depending on which data gets imported, and then be able to go into the detail screen and make changes to the what they want to propose for this account. And so they could put in as many lines here in this proposed area as they want. That adds up to the proposed budget. So that way it allows to have that detail of what, instead of just saying it's $5,800 for registration, we can identify that $2,000 is for this conference and $3,000 is for that conference, and have that detail, and also allows you to put in whatever notes that you want. So that there's some information about what makes up the dollar amount. And then it's just a matter of them going through it, and then you would be asking them to do it for just their department, of course, and it would be part of their scenario. And to the extent that they had any revenues within their department that were their revenues, they would do the same thing here. Again, that don't have the revenue accounts in this data, but it'd be the same information that they would then go through and put in what they want to change there. We've also added some easy edit things, or we're going to be adding some easy edit things for those things where what we just went through is too complicated for some departments. It allows them to do some easy, I want to add a position. It walks them through the steps. I want to move a position. It walks them through the steps. There'll be a dashboard which they'll be able to define actually what things they want to look at. What's the general fund balance after all this is done. And so there's different charts that they can use, and different pie charts, graphs that they can look at to see what is the end result of everything I just did. There's also a capital budget. And so that's where you would go through and identify what are the various different projects. It allows you, project title, which department, a description of the project, what we expect the expenditures to be, not only this year, but in future years. And then, of course, the proposed revenue in not only this year, but in future years. So it allows you to go through and, on the capital side, identify where are the projects and where's the money coming from, both on the expenditure side and on the revenue side. All right, and then I mentioned the security earlier. This would be something that would, again, just be something that probably the finance group, the supervisor level, would have access to be able to change people's passwords or logins, to be able to go into the various different users and see which group they belong to set up various different groups and limit the amount of input that certain groups are allowed to do. And then, of course, there'll be various reports. We just have some stock reports in here right now, but it's something we're still playing around with, trying to find a report writer that we like. But at the minimum, there'll be a whole set of reports that you will then be able to use for your budget. All right, so that's the overview. And so at this point, unless there's something that you think I should add?
No, I'm very happy.
Okay, and then so you guys have any questions, comments?
Nothing. Well, actually, I've written down a couple, but because you guys have done a great job, especially with the depth that you've gone into on the personnel costs and as many options as you have there. How do you see that getting populated throughout the course of the year? Is it imported, or is it a manual change of positions, change of benefits? kind of how's it maintained throughout the year? Because as we all know, personnel,
Right,
it's
exactly.
always changing.
Yeah, the initial structure, the organizational structure, the account structure, that will have to be manually inputted when you first start using the software. But as far as importing personnel data and importing that expenditure, from the finance system and from an existing, like, say, HR system, that will be an import.
Right.
That will be, and so we will be converting this over to SQL databases soon, and to be able to make that process easier. So it'll either be a SQL import export, or it will be an Excel import export for those financial systems that don't have that import export ability. And when I say import export, so at the end of the process, we'll also have an export process where it goes back into the finance system as this is the new budget. These are the new budget numbers, and the same thing go back into the HR system. So yeah, we want to limit the amount of actual input as much as possible.
But what you've just mentioned also brings up the fact that this could be in lieu of a HR system for a smaller city, so that they could actually.
Yeah, that's.
Go ahead.
I mean, with many cities, it's I've seen them kind of default more to the hey, I'd rather just have an all-in-one, so I don't have to worry about import export in. Rick, as you mentioned, smaller cities don't have the IT staff to really manage the import-export functions. Could it? I'm not familiar enough with a lot of HR-specific systems or ones that local agencies might be using right now. But how far are you from kind of creating an HR system with this as a added feature?
Well, I think you only have a couple of things that would need to be added for it to be a complete HR system. One would be a system to track anniversary dates for various reasons, and the other one would be a system to track any kind of disciplinary or other personnel quote related issues.
Right.
But outside of those two, I think it's probably pretty complete the way it is.
Right. No, I think you guys have done a really extensive job, building it, because those are all the components that, cities are building into their budget. So you've been listening very well.
Well, it's something that, we obviously spend a lot of time looking at budgets and talking to finance directors and they're always struggling this time of year with Excel spreadsheets and Word documents, and especially the smaller cities. And so this is something we're really aiming towards the smaller cities, the cities that don't have 100,000, 200,000 or more to spend on a budget system.
Right.
And so we're really pricing this in the $40,000 range. And we're also going to be having an offer where up until the end of the year, if you purchase the software, we're going to ask for $10,000 up front, but we're going to have a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if within 90 days you find that you don't like the software, it's not working for you, we'll give you your $10,000 back. And if at that point you're finding that, it is doing what I want it to do, then we'll ask for the other $30,000. But it's going to be trying to remove the risk from people, because it's always hard to make these changes, and you want to make sure you're not going down the wrong path.
Seems I'm a former finance director myself, but seems like 3 months might
be a little on the short side.
It might be a little on the short side, because you might still be through the implementation phase and setup phase with 3 months, and I can almost guarantee you nobody's gonna like you at that point. they're not gonna be seeing the output. It's all about input at that point.
Yeah, you're right. So, we'll have to be flexible.
But, I think you might want to just
okay.
to think about.
I appreciate that.
But I liked what I saw on the capital budget side, although that's sometimes the easiest part of the budget for many folks. Let me see what else I got. On personnel costs, you're also looking at retirement percentages, PERS rates, and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah. So that'd be the same thing. They would be identified as a one of the fringe benefit groups, and so you could then put that in also.
Right. Okay. 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 Gotcha.
And so yeah, it would just be one of the things on the list here. And so here we have CalPERS down at the bottom, and so it allows you to put in the percent for each different group. And of course, when you're doing the scenarios, as we saw with the projections, you could then project that forward also.
Right. Okay. Yeah, some of your exports. So you were still working on reports, right? You'd mentioned.
Yeah, and so yeah, we have very basic reports in now, but at this point we're going to be, if you need a report, we'll create a report. A lot of them will be fairly standard, but there'll be some where people will want something special, and so ultimately we'll work on a report writer where they can create their own, but we just haven't found one that we're happy with that is intuitive enough.